I grew up in a quiet suburb outside of Houston. Some people talk about neighborhoods where people don't lock their doors. This wasn't that kind of neighborhood. Situations in Houston notoriously went from 0 to 100 quickly. So while the neighborhood was basically quiet, doors were locked and checked religiously. That said, 90% of the time, the big neighborhood problems would be teens vandalizing or car break-ins. Annoying, but not really scary. I worked retail at a clothing store that closed at 9. I worked with a woman who I was getting to be friends with who asked if I could give her a ride home. It was a little out of the way, but I didn't mind. Her neighborhood was pretty sketchy. I don't know if that has anything to do with what happened later, but I drove her to her apartment and we sat in the car and chatted until she was ready to head inside. I sat in the car to watch her go inside. Around me, other residents were outside drinking and shooting the shit. It was around 10, so it would have been late for my neighborhood to be outside and talking at a volume like this on a weeknight, but it was expected at this place, so I didn't think much of it. When she got inside, she blinked the lights a couple times to let me know that she was in safely, and I headed for my childhood home. I should note that this was a time before cell phones, so it was kind of a basic routine. I was to call her from my house once I was home, and everyone would be confirmed safe. I don't remember the drive home really. I probably blasted tunes and sang along as I usually did, and parked in the driveway. The outside lights were on. Mom was good about turning them on for me, so I went inside with no fuss. Now, a note about my parents. They weren't mean drunks, but they were alcoholics. They still functioned okay by day, but it wasn't uncommon for me to arrive upon a scene as I did that night with all of the lights on, the TV going, and Mom passed out on the couch. Dad was presumably in the bedroom, or passed out in his man cave. From experience, I also knew if I turned off the lights or the TV, Mom would wake up and be grouchy about me waking her up. So I left everything as it was and headed up to the bathroom to brush my teeth and wash up for bed. Once in my room, I changed for bed. I called my friend to let her know I was home and all was well. One of my more annoying habits is that it's almost impossible for me to end a conversation. I'm tired as hell and I just want to read a book or something, but instead we're just rambling at each other about work things or whatever. I had already gotten into bed and turned the lights out. I was just laying in bed in the dark listening to my friend rambling. My room was at the front of the house. It had a weird wall in front of the window, some stylistic mid-century modern thing that didn't make tons of sense, but it did block out some of the light from the headlights when cars passed. Ours wasn't a high-trafficked road, but cars driving by and a square pattern of lights on the upper part of my wall wasn't an unusual sight. What was unusual, though, were specific beams of light bouncing around the upper part of the wall to the ceiling, and I stared at them for a moment before realizing that they were flashlights. That was highly unusual, but I figured it was kids. I wasn't the sort of kid that other kids bullied or pranked. We never had our house TP'd, and I couldn't imagine anyone wanting to do that now that we'd all graduated. I really needed to sleep because I had a college final the next day, and yet flashlights all around the house was super weird. My friend told me to call the police, but for a variety of reasons, I'm just not a fan. Besides, carrying flashlights in my front yard isn't a crime, so I couldn't even imagine what the police would do. I see well in the dark, and besides, the lights in the living room are still on, so still on the phone, but without turning on any extra lights, I got up with the intent to check the front door. I really don't remember how long my friend and I were on the phone rambling. It had to be a while for what happened next to have happened. I get to the living room, but I hear something in the kitchen. It's this weird metallic slapping sound that makes no sense at all. I tell my friend and she continues to caution me to call the police. But for what? Flashlights? Metal sounds? The kitchen lights are also on, so you have to picture it. A brightly lit living room with a woman passed out on the couch. The TV is on, the kitchen lights are on, but not the dining room. But for all intents and purposes, this looks like a house where people are awake, except for my mom, who is very clearly dead to the world. So I head towards the sound. At the very end of the kitchen, there's a smallish window with metal blinds. The blinds are closed, but they're rattling, making that weird metallic slapping noise. And I think, is the window open? We are not window opening people. I know some people in the South open their windows on a nice evening, but that is not us. Sometimes windows are opened temporarily when my mom would pass out while cooking dinner and something burned, but it was always for a very fixed time. It was possible that she left the window open, but unlikely, so I just stood there, staring at it, head cocked like a curious dog. And then I saw the front of a shoe on the sill. I screamed. Actually, just saying that I screamed way understates the noise that I made. I'm a notoriously low talker, and I assumed that I'd just been saving all that volume for this precise moment. I wailed, I cried, I keened. I became a banshee and threw all my power into my voice in this mighty force. The foot vanished, my mom woke. My friend screamed on the phone with me. From the back of our house, my dad came bounding out with his gun. I got off the phone and called the police. I grabbed another gun and headed outside behind my dad. I'm not a gun person, and going outside was super stupid, but the scream to end all screams had apparently done its job, as no one was there. Being kind of an expert in criminology due to watching police shows, I told everyone to stay away from the sill so the police could investigate it. I had visions of them taking fingerprints and molding the shoe prints to find the culprit. Adorable. The police arrived half an hour later, so it's good we weren't actually under attack. In the meantime, my mom started to doubt that I'd seen anything, and started to believe that she left the window open. But no. The police verified that the window had been pried open, that whomever it was very carefully took the bric-a-brac that decorated the sill and set it on the ground, as if trying to remain very quiet. At no point before this did I consider what the invaders' plan was. Maybe it was shock or lack of imagination, or just being tired, but they knew it was a full house and they were sneaking in. These weren't robbers who just wanted to take some electronics for quick cash. They were going to take us by surprise. To do what? Thoroughly chilled, I asked when they were going to take the fingerprints, and the cop basically laughed me off because nothing was stolen. We locked down the windows and I stayed up all night, trying not to imagine what exactly those people were going to do to us. I was 20, living alone on the ground floor of an apartment building. My living room windows faced the small parking lot for the building, which wasn't gated. I'd stay up late, watching TV or playing video games, almost every night. It was winter when I first moved in, so I'd have the blinds down at night to help keep the cool air out. Summer came and there was no AC in the apartment, so I'd open the windows and blinds at night for cool air. One night, I'm laying on the couch watching TV when I get that feeling of being watched. I look over at the window and a man has his hands and face pressed against the screen, merely 3 feet from where I was lying, just watching me. I let out a blood-curdling scream and he did not even blink. Terrified, I jumped up, grabbed the phone, and screamed that I was calling the cops. He still just stood there, completely motionless and dead-eyed. At that point, I yelled that I'm getting the neighbor and started walking to the door, and he finally took off. I locked the window and stayed up all night, completely on edge. My boyfriend at the time came over and stayed for a full week. He made sure to leave the blinds open and sat at the edge of the couch, closest to the window, to make it known that I wasn't always alone. The creeper didn't show up again, so eventually I got comfortable thinking that it was an isolated incident of some rando wandering around the parking lot to break into cars. Maybe another 3 weeks after that, I get home late from waiting tables and park in the lot. I get changed, grab a snack, and head to the living room to play games. I start to raise the blinds open to the windows to let in the cool air, and the creeper is standing there with his face pressed against the screen. He was not standing in the parking lot when I pulled in, as I parked right by my window. I can only assume that he was waiting around the corner of the building, watching me come home, timing my movements. This time, I grabbed the phone and immediately called the cops. I was shaking, crying, completely hysterical. The creeper takes off. The cops come and say that they'll have someone patrol the block when they can, and my boyfriend immediately comes over. He wants to stay with me until I can get out of there, so I start looking at different apartments. Another 3 to 4 weeks or so later, I have an apartment lined up on a high floor in a doorman building, cause at this point, fuck that. My boyfriend had to go out of town for a few days, so I decided to go stay at my friend's place because I certainly wasn't going to be there alone. I'm at my friend's place for 2 nights, but I wanted to run home and grab a few things I'd forgotten. She goes with me, for obvious reasons, and we go in the afternoon, not after dark. We decide to hang out for a bit and play games together because it's daylight and there's activity around the building. No AC, so I hesitantly raise the blinds to get fresh air. I'm terrified opening them, then laugh to myself as I do it, and of course, no one's there. I open the actual window to see 2 large holes cut in the screen, right above the latches you push in to lift it. They were definitely not there 2 days ago. My blood ran entirely cold. The creeper knew my boyfriend was gone. He was watching and saw his car was gone. I'd left my car there as my friend picked me up, and we always left a light on in the living room to make the creeper think we were awake. So he saw my car, thought I was home, saw the light on, yet proceeded to cut holes in the screen to break in. I have no idea if he actually gained access, but seeing how bold he was terrified me. How long had he been watching me, learning my patterns, and getting gradually more aggressive with every interaction? I still sometimes get a chill when I raise my blinds, and it took a long time getting comfortable living in anything but a high-rise. Thanks for the lifelong PTSD, creeper. Let's not meet again. I just found this sub, but this happened about 7 years ago. The story starts with me getting home from high school on the bus. I made it home and saw that my mom wasn't there, and since my dad was at work and my brother didn't get out of school until later, I was the only person there. I put my backpack down and go to untie my shoes, and some dude walks out from a hallway. I go into Occam's razor mode and assume that this is some sort of handyman or repair guy, since we had been moved in recently and had been getting a lot of repair work done to fix the half-assed DIY electrical, plumbing, and paint jobs left behind by the previous owners. Additionally, he is wearing some sort of tool belt and fits the general repairman look. My mom's usually around when we have people working on the house, so I assume that my mom must have left not long ago and would be back soon. I nonchalantly tell the guy that my mom should be back soon, and he mumbles something like, "Thanks," and leaves out the front door to what I assume is the repair truck. It is at this point that I text my mom, asking when she'll be back, and who's the dude in the house. She asks if I'm joking, and it's only at this point that I come to and realize that I was sitting on the couch chatting with the dude burgling our house. At this point, the guy was long gone, and luckily, my mom was only a couple of minutes away at a store just down the road. She gets back and we call the police, and they take a look around, but nothing actually went missing, and nothing ever really came of it. I'm honestly glad it went down the way it did, since I only knew what happened once it was already over. This guy had put himself between me and the front door, and I'm really not sure what freaked out fight or flight me would have done. I also can't imagine what the guy was thinking when I basically just let him walk out.